Welcome to another video about how to heal adoption and narcissistic abuse. If you're new to my channel, my name is Lærke Theodora. I work as a spiritual and psychological counselor, and I am an adoptee myself. So in this video, we're gonna talk about what no one tells you about being adopted. I feel like it's time that we get some facts straight about what it is that no one really tells you about how it is to be adopted. I know that everyone is unique and that everyone is experiencing it in a different way and that no one has the exact same experiences, but there's still some overall common traits that we can dive into and talk about that a lot of adopted people are experiencing in their own way, but they're still experiencing some of these things. So the first thing that no one tells you about being adopted is that you will meet a lot of professionals like psychologists, therapists, counselors, who won't be able to address your adoption trauma, who won't be able to see you and see your challenges that you are coming to talk about. They won't be able to see it through the lens of the fact that you're adopted. They won't be able to address your adoption trauma like they should be, because they have not been trained enough in understanding what it is that actually happens when we are being separated from our birth mother. Then maybe we end up in an orphanage. We are fighting for our life, and then we're being adopted into a strange family that we don't know, and then we're again fighting for our life, trying to adapt the best that we can because it's the only way we can survive. They had no idea that many of your core issues, your suppressed emotions, your coping mechanisms, your self-sabotaging patterns, it stems from that. They can't make that connection because they're not trained enough. They don't know enough about how adoption impacts us. Whenever you go to a professional and any sort, just be aware of that if you feel like they are not addressing it, that they're not taking you seriously when you talk about it and when you're being vulnerable and sharing it, that maybe it's because they have no idea how to meet you there. So one thing that could be really, really good is to ask them questions before you decide working with them. So you can make a list before choosing a therapist. You can make a list about things that you need them to be able to do. So you can ask them, how much have you been trained in helping adopted people navigate through life, healing their traumas? How much knowledge do you have? How much education do you have around adoption? Which method or approach do you use to work with adoptees? And what result have you gained from working with adoptees? And have you even worked with adoptees before me? That can be good questions to prepare, and then you can call them before you even decide, like, do I want to work with them or not? You can call them and just ask them this and say, I'm considering working with you, and I just really, really need to make sure that you are the right one to help me with this. So, and then you ask them all the questions. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not being too picky or being too critical, because you have to be critical. You have to be critical because we're talking about you. We're not talking about a chicken in the garden. We're talking about you as a person, you as the little boy or girl who lost her or his mother and maybe were left on the street, picked up, placed in an orphanage, and maybe flew across the world to get a new chance in a new family. It's a lot. I don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that some professionals are just not skilled in helping you, supporting you. That's just a part of life. They can't be skilled in every aspect of life. And some of the greatest therapists that I have met They spent a whole life, they spent a whole professional career, like 25 years, to become an expert in just adoption, nothing else, just adoption. So it says a lot about how much training and education and professional experience that professionals actually need to have in order to provide the qualified support and help that adopted people need. The next thing that no one tells you about how it is to be adopted is that when you go through life, you will be confronted in the surroundings. You will be reminded and confronted of everything that you never had and that you might never will have in the future. What I mean by that is when you, for example, walk on the street, go into a supermarket or sit in the bus and you see a mother with her child and you see how much this mother is loving her child. You can just see it in the way, in her body language, how she's petting her head or holding her hand or smiling to her. The voice, the tone of her voice, like when she's replying to her daughter. Experiences like that can remind you of what you never had and what you will never have in the future, perhaps. I know that a lot of adopted people are fortunate to be reunited with their biological family and that everything goes very well. I also know that it's not always a good experience to be reunited with your biological family. But those who are, where it is a good experience, they might be able to repair some of this loss, some of these experiences that was taken away from them. Because we're talking about fundamental existential experiences, the most natural experience of feeling loved by your own mother when you walk in the supermarket with her and the way that she's looking at her. You can see that she's so proud of you and that she just loves you so much. Those are experiences that non-adopted people completely take for granted. And I have heard a lot of adopted people tell me that it's painful. It's so painful to walk around outside, constantly being reminded of things like this. And it can really depend on where you are in your healing process with your adoption. And there can be different themes that's gonna come up. I had an experience where I was on my way home from Berlin and I was sitting in the plane. Just across from me, there was this dad, and the moment we were going to land, we had to put our seatbelts on and sit still, and he took his son on his lap, and then he opened this children's book to read for him. And he was like mimicking different characters when he was like reading. And when I saw that, I completely burst into tears, and I was so envious of that boy that he had that experience, and I was being reminded that I would never have that. I would never have that experience. First of all, because it's too late, because I was an adult when I saw it. And second of all, it's too late because I chose to not have contact with my adoptive family. It was difficult to return home after that experience. I remember that I really had to sit with that for a long time. And I could feel that I needed to connect with my inner child that had that age, that I was being mirrored back. And I had to sit with her. And I really, really had to give her that love that my dad was supposed to give me. I had to imagine that it was me sitting there. What would I wish that my dad would have said to me in that situation, reading that book? What did I wish that he had done? How he had showed me affection and love. So for me, it was a way of repairing what I never had. I repaired with myself, with my inner child, acting like now I am that father that you never had, and I'm gonna give you what you tell me that you needed in that moment that you never experienced. What was it that the boy on the plane with the dad was reminding you of, was triggering in you, was making you sad about? And we can experience situations like this all throughout our life. It can be so many things. It can also be when you get pregnant, if you're a woman, and you're about to give birth to your own child, and that can be extremely triggering, and that can mirror back to you so many things about what you never had with your mother. If you maybe were taken the moment you were born, or if you have no idea what happened when you were born, like if you were even with your mom afterwards, then going through that yourself with your own birth can be very, very challenging, and it can bring up so many difficult emotions that you haven't processed yet, because maybe it's the first time you are pregnant and you have not experienced similar situations before where the same kind of emotions were being activated. So this is something that no one really tells us about being adopted. The environments constantly mirror back to us what it is that still hurts inside of us, and what it is that needs our love and attention and compassion and care. We will continue experiencing this in the environments that our inner child within us is needing that repair, because it needed that as a child, but it wasn't experiencing that. So it needs that repair. It needs our love. It needs our compassion and understanding. And it needs to be told what it needs to hear in order to feel loved and to feel seen, heard, and validated. The last thing that no one tells you about being adopted is that you were not meant to live an ordinary life. And the reason why I say this is because I have experienced myself that I was not meant to live an ordinary life, and the adoption plays a huge role in that. And I also say it because so many of the adopted people that I've worked with have similar experiences. I have seen that a lot of adopted people, they have an extraordinary power within them, and they have an even more extraordinary wisdom to navigate challenging experiences like it is to be adopted. And they have a wisdom and knowledge to navigate through so complex experiences that hurt so much. I haven't seen that in non-adopted people. And it's not to put adopted people on a pedestal, even though that's okay if you feel that I do. But the thing is that in order for a person to go through something so complex and so challenging, that is so isolating as well, because it's a very isolating experience to be adopted. And you can probably recall this from your own life, where you have met people over and over and over in different situations, and they just did not understand how you were feeling inside, and they just did not understand how it felt like to be you, and how much your adoption was impacting you, and that you needed something else in some of these situations that non-adopted people would never feel like they needed. And then we take it to a little bit more spiritual level. I have seen in my work with adopted people that it's only the bravest souls that chooses to go through the experience on earth where they are being adopted. It's only the bravest souls that choose this kind of life experience on earth, because they know before they choose this, they know that it's gonna be so tough, it's gonna be so difficult, it's gonna be so challenging, and they're gonna feel so isolated and so alone and so wrong and so unlovable. They know that very, very well. And if they did not believe that they had what it takes to overcome that, to make it to the other side, then they would not choose it, because then it wouldn't matter. Then they would waste a whole life on earth with an experience that they couldn't use anyway. Whenever a soul chooses to incarnate on earth, they are planning what's going to happen when they enter. They are very closely planning that, very consciously planning that. And when they choose, they want to go through the experience of being adopted, it's because there's something that they need to learn from that. And the only way they can learn that is by experiencing it themselves. And this again is related to what I said in the beginning of the video, like with professionals who just have no idea what it is for you to be adopted and how it feels like, because they maybe didn't try to be adopted themselves. And it's not that we always have to experience it ourselves in order to understand it, but it still makes a huge difference. This is why you did not come here to live an ordinary life as an adopted person. You came here because you're going to use the experience and the knowledge and the wisdom that this traumatic and painful experience will give you. What this experience will teach you about life, about being a human, about love, about emotions, about what matters, about belonging, about identity, about staying true to who you are, about speaking up your truth, about showing up authentically. That's what your soul wants to learn from this experience. That's what it wants to learn. All of that. That knowledge is priceless. It is so priceless. And the more a soul can gain wisdom and knowledge from these experiences that's very complex and challenging, the more it can help humanity expand their consciousness and expand their heart's frequency and begin to live from their heart. Because being adopted is a very heartless experience. It's a very heartless decision. If you ask me, it's very heartless because it's all about survival. It's all about you surviving this, you adapting into a new family. It's about you being forced to adapt and to change and to become someone else in order to survive this. So it's a very heartless experience. And also because a lot of people don't care how it feels like for you to be adopted. In the adoption industry, they don't care at all. They have their own agenda and they only want to hold on to the narrative that it's amazing to be adopted and it's the best thing that we can offer a child in need. But the reality is different. Yes, a lot of adopted people have had an amazing childhood in their adoptive family, but a lot of adopted people have not. And those are the people that I'm referring to primarily, is the adopted people that did not have a great childhood. And even if they had a great childhood, they're still carrying the trauma from being separated from the mom, from maybe being left on the street, from being placed in an orphanage and being adopted afterwards. So even though the family can be so amazing and loving and caring, they cannot replace the biological mother, and they cannot take away, they cannot erase the trauma and the loss that we went through. They're simply not able to erase that. And they can definitely not cover that up with saying that they just love you so much and you are their dream child or whatever it is. I don't doubt it for a second that you didn't come here to live an ordinary life, because that's not what I see. I don't see this in adopted people. I have worked with non-adopted people as well. They have a different kind of life. They have a different mission. They have a different purpose. But you, my dear, you have a very, very specific purpose. And it's not a coincidence that your soul chose that you should be adopted, that you should go through that tremendous pain, loss, separation, abandonment. There is a higher meaning to that. So whenever you feel really, really lost or struggling with all these traumatic experiences that you carry inside, maybe it can help to think that you are being taken care of, because you are. You have a whole soul family that's taking care of you, that's watching over you, and that's protecting you. Because everyone in the spiritual realm, they want to see you succeed with this, because they have so much respect for your soul that chose to go through this. They did not have the balls to do that, but you did. That also means you have the balls to get to the other side of where you are now. You have the courage, you have the strength, you have the knowledge, you have the wisdom to go for your dream life. Go for what it is that's calling you deep inside. What is it that's calling you, nudging you to go in a certain direction? What life is it that you're imagining that you really want to live? That life exists. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to think about it, and you wouldn't even think about it. Then you would think about a different life. But the life that you're specifically imagining in your head is already there. It's already in the future. That's what you are tapping into. That's what you can feel is waiting for you when you move in this direction. And you can trust that 100%. I hope that this video gave you some kind of reassurance, confirmation, hope in your journey as an adopted person. I will be back very, very soon with a new video. I would love to hear your comments about how this video resonated with you, and also what you would like me to dive into in future videos. In the meantime, I'm sending you all my love and blessings.